Друзья, привет! Мы вот снова здесь со Стефаном на различных мероприятиях. Live in Russia. Стефана вы знаете, да, знают тоже чемпиона мира уже пятикратного. Russian people know you.
Ele se conhece, tá falando que os russos lá, ele tá fazendo uma live, os russos já te reconheceram.
Ele não tem evento russo.
Родolfo Vieira выступает, было раньше АСБ, теперь, какой номер agora? АСА, теперь АСА.
Это что, New Federation?
Нет, российский. Камат, было раньше Камат, турнир, АСБ было, а теперь АСА, а не Акамат. Он будет выступать в России.
В России?
В июне, да.
В июне?
В июне.
С кем будет?
O nome você não sabe do adversário ainda, né?
Ainda não sei, mas é russo.
Он пока не знает номер соперника, но русский. Тоже нутриолог и тренер.
Да.
Даниэл Деза.
Как зовут его?
Даниэл Деза.
Даниэл Деза?
Да.
Сегодня будем разговаривать, да?
Будем
Запишем видео о глютене.
Ele quer falar do glúten,
Да, а то многих
будем
пугают.
говорить об глютене, БЦА, все это спортивные питания. Не пропустите, ребята. Родolfo Vieira 5 раз чемпион мира. Человек вообще...
Очень скромный парень.
Да, хороший парень. Falou que você é humilde e legal.
Good luck in Russia. Okay, see you guys.
Тяжелые медицинские мячи, которые у тебя есть там?
150 паундов.
Tem 100 e poucas vezes.
It's very easy.
For a little girl.
For you.
Aí vai ser bom. Se arrancar um cara de 110. Vai.
Inhale. As you're inhaling, I want you to simultaneously tense every single muscle of your body.
Это для чего, Стефан, упражнение?
Он хотел, чтобы я считал на русском для него. Я буду считать на русском для него. Начинаем. Сейчас объясню. И раз, два, три, четыре, пять.
Piate eu já me perdi.
Шесть и seis. 7, 8, 9 и 10.
Foi 10? Como é 10?
10.
10. Parece 17, mas eu já tava 17.
Он думает, что было 17. Okay. Это упражнение, когда мы посмотрим, что человек имеет одна нога сильнее, чем другая, и сделаем специальное упражнение, чтобы было отдельные ноги. И тем более с руками, и тоже стабилизация и туловище, чтобы туловище, корпус, и воздействовали на работу.
Não, você colocou aqui para estabilizar o core, certo?
Pode, mas nesse exercício vai ser difícil para ele. Tem outros que a gente faz assim, eu já vou te mostrar um que vai ajudar para o próximo.
Смотрите, друзья, как выглядит чемпион мира по double biceps. Пресс какой.
Então você vai fazer assim, com a bola, você pode fazer um V aqui. Aqui desenho, esse é bom. Vai levantar a bola lá em cima, braço esticado. Agora você vai andar, vai fazer a passada, vai fazer uma passada com o braço esticado. Aí esse é bom pra ele por causa disso. Mais larga a passada, mais larga, aí você vai melhorar assim.
Пятикратный чемпион мира по бразильскому джиу-джитсу. Летом будет бороться в России. Еще пока неизвестно с кем, ну мы имя не знаем. Если кто знает, пишите в комментариях. Видите, какая форма сухая, мышцы как хорошо видны. Пресс, грудные, все, спина.
Pouco mais aberto essa passada.
А на фоне вы видите студентов Стефана. Они в реабилитационном центре курсы повышения мастерства проходят. Сколько он весит? Стефан, какой вес у него?
97 килограмм.
97? Он всегда примерно в такой форме, да? Он хороший.
Então, você tá mantendo sempre a forma já, né?
Не набирает жир, да?
Не, он постарается постоянно быть в таком-то...
В такой форме. Но это уже, он уже на подготовке к
Он уже начал. Você começou então a preparação. Vocês começaram a preparação pro...
Já tem tempo. Já treinando desde dezembro.
А, dezembro. É. Он постоянно, профессиональный, постоянно...
Придерживается плана
придерживается
питания.
план
Ему
и
расписывает кто-то специалист?
Он пишет питание, да.
Он пишет питание ему, да? Ушел.
Não, ele também me ajuda na alimentação.
Tem вот, еще есть нутролог в Бразилии,
Еще есть у него.
который помогает. Когда придется такой-то уровень, нужно много
Конечно.
поддержки.
Не знаешь, какой процент жира сейчас у него? Не знаете?
Mediram a porcentagem de gordura dele, não?
Mediu, mas eu acho que tá com da faixa dos 8 ou meia.
Думаю, что где-то 8,5.
8,5. Круто.
Ой, сильный. Вы сказали, что много интересного сегодня. Еще будет. Vamos lá, de novo. Bem o braço. O negócio está controlando todo o core e está tendo que fazer amplitude. Então a amplitude está reduzida. Você tem que abrir bem essa passada. Tá vendo? 90 graus nas duas pernas é importante para ele. Dá para perna da frente um pouco mais para frente. Mais essa passada, tá vendo que uma está menor do que a outra? Essa passada está um pouco melhor, agora abre mais à direita, vai lá na frente. Por quê? Porque tem uma perna aqui, ó, o glúteo da direita, tá? É isso que ele está encurtando.
Só que eu percebi que ele está
Стефан, ты сейчас готовишь каких-нибудь бойцов вообще? Или ты только занимаешься? Консультируешь?
Консультирую. Много из American Top Team. И мы в мае мы там будем.
Да, American Top Team 4 мая. Снимать будем для вас.
Потому что сейчас я как ученик Сельянов и такой уровень, чтобы больше консультировать с командами и помогу сразу тренер и главный тренер по физической подготовке Эвертон, Кател Макарам, страйкинг-коуч, главный коуч, я связан с этими ребятами.
Ну, я знаю, ты работаешь еще с сыном.
Сына Рубенс Баррикелло, да, и вчера видео сделал маленький пост, он 24 часа гонки выиграл.
Выиграл?
Это очень много выносливых.
Обалдеть.
Они только 4 человек и
А какой
водили 24 часа.
Какой
Каждый
класс
по 2
автомобиля?
часа. Не, они карты, но профессиональные. Было люди, которые выступают в Дейтона, в 24 часа в Дейтона. Это
самый крутой.
Да, и они проиграли.
Закончился семинар у нас. Так что, друзья, скоро очень много интересного. Друзья, хорошие новости. Наконец-то вы можете покупать одежду с логотипами Heavy Metal Gym. Переходите по ссылке в описании в мой магазин на всемайки.ру. Вы видите, на данный момент есть 5 различных картинок быков. Быки довольно-таки брутальные, очень интересно и качественно смотрятся. Мужская, женская одежда. Выбираете себе цвета, размеры и, грубо говоря, сами себе заказываете маечку, которую хотите. Майки, футболки. Есть женские варианты, естественно, тоже различных цветов и размеров. Также есть у нас еще и худи. Сейчас вы увидите на экране тоже. Это пока что все женская одежда. Есть детская одежда. Тоже не забывайте. И худи многие любят. Есть с капюшоном, есть без. Выбирайте тоже различные цвета. Все на майки.ру. Цены довольно-таки недорогие. И каждый может себе позволить теперь футболку, майку или даже бейсболку с логотипом любимого канала. Ну что, друзья, теперь у вас есть все, что вы хотите. Также можно купить и кружки, и бутылку даже для того, чтобы на тренировке пить из нее.
Coach already gave us a good introduction, but our plan today is kind of have an open discussion. Everyone kind of be free, bounce ideas off each other, open things up for learning. I'm actually really blessed and honored to have you all here in our new facility, man. This is super cool for us, but don't be afraid to ask questions. Let's kind of all just learn. It's not a lecture, it's not school. Let's have fun. It's a field trip. If anyone needs to use the bathrooms, there's 2 down there and there's 1 more up in this hall. Feel free to go, try to hold it if you guys go. From what I heard, you guys are doing lower extremity injuries and low back pain in class right now, right? Yes. So that's kind of what we're going to focus on today. So what I kind of want from you guys is, what are your ideas? What causes low back pain? What causes lower extremity injuries? Just in nature.
Don't have a seat. Relax.
Yeah. If y'all want to sit down there and sit on the table, we'll stay here.
Go wherever you want. Sit on the boat ball, whatever you want. Pick anything. If you want to bring a chair over from over there, you're more than welcome to. But go ahead and get comfortable. Oh, you had to do it, didn't you?
For the pictures. So I'll tell you what, I'm gonna start here and we're kind of work our way around. But this section, what are some causes of low back pain, low back injuries, low extremity injuries?
Back weakness.
Back weakness. So weakness, muscular weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Excessive sitting.
Excessive sitting.
We have our whiteboard, the little one.
Alright, so we got excessive sitting, we got muscular weaknesses.
Posture.
Posture, okay. Posture.
Like lifting. Keep going on. Like things.
So lifting hurts us?
No, I mean like, when you lift something wrong,
So if you lift something wrong. Okay, so posture again, or
Improper body mechanics.
poor mechanics, which would come from possibly weaknesses, and so it all kind of works together in that sense. Alright.
Lack of intra-abdominal pressure.
Lack of intra-abdominal pressure, okay. Alright. Obesity can be a cause.
Okay.
I mean, and those are all true. What we try to do here is we're trying to dive deeper into everything to figure out exactly what causes our bodies to malfunction and what causes our bodies to potentially be open to injuries. So everything in our body is a cell. We all agree on that? Blood is made up of blood cells, right? Muscles, muscle cells, bone cells, but everything is a cell, correct? Cells respond to 3 different stimuli. So how can we change our cells? And you guys all talked about structural things that change our cells, correct? Trying to lift too heavy, or poor body mechanics, or poor posture, or sitting too long. Those all affect our cells structurally, right? If I give myself a blunt trauma, I'm gonna affect the cells in my arm. What else affects our cells? Nutrition. Okay, so biochemistry. What is nutrition? What entails nutrition?
Micronutrients, micronutrients.
Food?
Yeah.
Food. What else? Intra-abdominal pressure, macronutrient.
I thought I broke it down.
So we got food. Food affects our cells. So let's say we eat food that is very inflammatory in nature. Could that hurt our back? Yes. So now we have food as being a potential thing that could cause injury in our body. What else?
Lack of hydration.
That okay? So water, what we drink, lack of hydration. Now we're gonna come back to that. Hydration is a big one. We're gonna write that one down. I'm gonna see what hydration means and how it ties into everything.
You got the perfect guy for that too.
Yeah, exactly. What else? What else can affect our cells? So we got food, we got hydration. What about what we put on our bodies? What's the biggest organ in the body?
Skin.
Our skin. Okay. What about lotion? Could that affect your cells?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. What if you put Novocaine on your skin? What happens? Your body absorbs it, goes numb. So what does that mean? It affected our cells. So whatever we put on our body and whatever our skin absorbs can affect our cells. How about sunlight?
Yeah, definitely.
Can we absorb sunlight? And what do we use that for? Right? We change it into vitamin K, vitamin D. So a lot of processes. So that's another thing that can affect our cells. Who wants to be my first volunteer?
Gonzalo, thank you.
Gonzalo, my first volunteer! All right, you can stay right there. You don't even have to move. I just want you to shut your eyes. Now I want you to visualize. You want it in Spanish?
Some things he had translated because if you speak too fast, like I'll go like, no.
Do we have an English-speaking volunteer? Español está bien, pero mejor que no.
No.
I know, I'll speak slow, I'm playing. So, Coach Diaz comes out of the kitchen. Shut your eyes for me. And on this platter that he's carrying, there's a big, juicy lemon. And he takes a knife and he cuts the lemon into wedges. And he passes you one. Put your hand out. Take the lemon. Put the lemon up to your mouth and bite into it. And imagine all the juices pouring out into your mouth. Open your eyes for me. Did you feel anything?
Yeah, like I probably went like, no.
So you made a face. Did your mouth water at all?
No. I just wanted like.
Did anyone else kind of think about it as I was doing it? Did anyone's mouth water? Did anyone's jaws clench up?
Sour.
Okay. Did anyone in here bite a lemon? Nope. But were your cells affected? So what does that mean? What we think affects our cells. Okay, so now we got three pathways that affect our cells. We got structure, we got physical or nutrition, biochemistry, and we got what we think. So now let's go around again. What can cause low back pain? What can cause lower extremity injuries? Let's build on it. What was it?
That's everything.
Almost everything.
Yeah, pretty much.
So now if we're going to talk about helping people and helping athletes at the highest level, it only makes sense that we have to look at all three of those. It can't just be exercise. It can't just be nutrition. It can't just be diet. It has to be the mental part. It has to be what they put on our body, what lotions they use, what shampoos are they using, what soaps are they using, what do they brush their teeth with, are they getting enough sunlight, do they get outside, are they in nature, because all that can affect your cells. Now we're thinking about helping people, and not even athletes, we're thinking about someone that's just quote unquote sick or has issues, symptoms. How can we help unwind those symptoms to allow them to feel better and be better? And that's what we should all be striving to do in our field, in this health profession. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Cool. So what I want to do, because of the program that you guys are in, and even our backgrounds was, real heavy on the structural aspect of it. What are we doing exercise-wise? What are we doing to work out? How do we move our body? Why are we moving that body our way? Why do we choose the exercises that we're choosing to try to help somebody? We heard, we sit too long, all right? So what happens now? Does that cause the muscular weaknesses that somebody else says? Or was the muscular weakness causing us to sit that way? What came first, the chicken and the egg? And how does it all come together to allow us to move and function in our environments the way that we want to? So I'm actually gonna have Brandon kind of step up here and he's gonna get started on a few things. We're gonna go with the structure issues of the lower extremity issues and how it's
All right. We got a little mouthful here.
And again, we don't have any planned agenda here. We just kind of took some notes and we're going to talk and go. Go back to bounce this question off.
How much have you guys addressed myofascial lines? Anybody familiar with myofascial lines? Okay, so myofascial lines. What's that?
No, myofascia is, but
myofascia. Okay. So myofascia. What we're really looking at with myofascial lines is how one thing connects to the next. So Tom Myers, the author of Anatomy Trains, has really looked into these myofascial lines, how you can take something from the plantar fascia, come up the calf group, up the hamstrings, up the sacrotuberous ligament, erector spinae, all the way over the scalp and into the eyebrows. And he's actually held this up and go, you guys think everything's connected now? With no bony structures of any type. So that's a myofascial line, it's a superficial back line. So that's something that I'll take a look at, all sorts of different lines to the body. Along lateral lines, we've got crossing over lines, we've got anterior lines, we've got the core, the deep front line of the body, what we start addressing as the core now, not just this, what everybody thinks core work is, or doing abs. So the core actually comes into the deepest part of the body. It starts down into the first ray, comes up the deep compartment muscles of the lower extremity, into the adductors, into the pelvic floor, on the anterior aspect of the spine, comes all the way up the spine and into the tongue and neck. So that, to us, is the core when we start addressing certain things. So that's really what I'll start looking at when I start breaking down certain people's biomechanics. Since you guys haven't addressed too much of the myofascial lines, I just want to show you one or two things on how the entire body is connected, or one little bit of the body can be affected by the other. So first thing that I want to look at with the foot and ankle complex, really the knee is what we're going to address here. As I go into pronation, knee dives in. Supination, knee goes out. Same thing with the hip. If I'm internally rotating, the knee's going to go in. I'm going to get some pronation in the foot. If I'm externally rotating the hip, knee's going out. Same sort of thing here. So what I want you guys to look at now, if the foot can affect the hip, what happens to my shoulders when I go into an anterior tilt? Right? If I go into a posterior tilt?
That's right.
Okay, so we know that the hips can affect the shoulders, right? Mm-hmm. If the foot can affect the hip, and the hip can affect the shoulders, can the foot affect the shoulders? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's really what myofascial lines, in a way, is about. It's these pathways of force that can be transmitted through the body, through these fascial connections from soft tissue. So that's one thing that I'll really address when I'm taking a look at any type of lower extremity injury, any injury at all. First thing I want to see is, how does someone move? So there's a thousand ways to have all sorts of assessments, and it's all over the place. You'll see overhead squat assessments. What are some assessments that you guys will use as a baseline assessment? Overhead squat. Is that y'all's primarily one that you like to go to? Okay. Give me some reasons why you like that one.
It's functional.
Shows you
Dynamic.
Okay. Very good. What's that?
Time efficient.
Time efficient. Very good. Who uses gait here as their assessment?
Supposed to. Supposed to.
What's the most basic function of a human being?
Walking.
So why wouldn't we use that as our assessment to see how someone's moving? How many guys walk around like this?
Yeah, so I mean, just to compare those two, I know function was one of the first things that I heard when you said you wanted to use an overhead squat assessment. What would you be looking at? Compare those two into function specifically? Gait versus overhead squat. What are you guys looking at here?
Overhead squat, I think you're looking more at how the shoulders affecting with the hips and the knees. Where gait, you're watching the feet and the hips, and then how the shoulders are rotating with those things and movement. And it's a more natural thing. Anybody can get on the treadmill. Let's walk your walk. That's it. It's not taxing for anybody. So even people who can't do an overhead squat yet, because of whatever reason, can do the gait.
Yep, that's a great point. So what I'll really look at with gait and why I tend to use gait, not saying that I won't use an overhead squat assessment. I typically don't, but I'm not against it by any means. But what I want to take a look at is, when someone's walking, what is happening in that first, that foot and ankle complex, the hips, the thoracic spine, just like you were mentioning. I want to see, is that first ray able to get down to the ground? Or is the midfoot locking and unlocking? Do we have subtalar eversion in the calcaneus? Is the tibia going into internal rotation with the femur following that? So is the patella now tracking in the groove the way that it should be? Are the glutes now able to eccentrically load? So as you can see, as we're starting to build up through that kinetic chain, what's happening here? Are they actually stepping through and coming through the hips, now getting that thoracic spine rotation? they're not getting that thoracic spine rotation. Why not? Is that making something else in the lower extremity now starting to have some sort of heel lip? Because we have reciprocal motions. That's how we walk. So that's one of the biggest reasons why I don't jump to the overhead squat assessment, because we don't have those reciprocal motions. And that is huge with rhythm and timing in the body. And that's from sport, exercise, function, anything, rhythm and timing is huge. So going back to that thoracic spine rotation, if we don't have that thoracic spine rotation and now we're getting all sorts of movement down in that lower extremity, then we got to figure out, is someone not having that rotation up here because now they're stabilizing up here? Are they able to stabilize into their pelvic floor? You guys do much with pelvic floor? Ish. We'll address some of that with neutral spines, anterior tilts, posterior tilts, all sorts of stuff. We'll get into that in a few. But we need somebody to be able to stabilize in that pelvic floor, which is the bottom aspect of the pelvis through here up. So if you can stabilize from that area, we're able to breathe diaphragmatically. Now we're able to move through here. So that's one of the biggest things that I'll address when someone comes with me with some sort of neck pain is, first thing they want to do is they go, touch my traps, just push on it. I just want to be touched. That's all great. You can make someone feel good for a day until that pain comes right back. One of the biggest things I want to address is, are you able to stabilize in your pelvic floor? So that way we can take a breath and relax through here. All right? And if they can't stabilize in that pelvic floor, why not? Is it because that first ray is not getting down and they're staying into this supinated position? And so now they're not able to get into that tibial internal rotation with the femur, the glutes eccentrically loading, and so everything's binding up. So it's one of those with lower extremity activities or lower extremity evaluations of any type and really upper extremity. I'm gonna start from the base and take a look at that foot and ankle complex first. Take a look at the hips and then the thoracic spine. And not that it has to go in that order, but I just like to start from the ground up. So let's do, what would you like to get into next?
Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah, we have any questions about something like that?
No, it definitely makes sense.
So I just kind of want to build on a little bit what Brantley was saying and why he does that and how it ties into some of the things that you guys brought up earlier. So let's just say this is a muscle, right? It eccentrically loads, concentrically loads, right? Eccentrically loads, concentrically loads. Now, if we're talking about fascial lines, so for example, there's one that can connect from this shoulder. You tell you this is an anterior X kind of pattern. Where it comes through the chest, abdominals, obliques, into the adductors, down through this deep front line, and it connects all the way down onto this navicular bone. So as Brantley walks, as he steps forward, we get a loading here, and then if we have this muscle on the other side, it's actually eccentrically loading and then contracting. And that's why you get that contralateral reciprocation like he was talking about. So it extends, contracts, extends, contracts. And that's how these myofascial lines work together. So a lot of times we think about, all right, well, a hip flexor or a tight pec, but if this is tight here, or let's just say we're going to come back to our words, hydration. If that pec is lacking hydration, it's not going to be able to stand and contract. So let's just take this example again, and let's just say we put a quote unquote a knot, an adhesion in there. Mm-hmm. So now everything else is extending, but this isn't. This doesn't have the ability to load and unload anymore, load and unload anymore. And how this can affect the gait. Maybe it's not opening up as he's coming through, or as he steps here, this is, staying forward. And this is the things that he's looking for in the gait. It's like, okay, so as this person opens up this way, this shoulder's high, he's open. But as he comes in this way, it's staying down. And those are the little subtleties that will help us kind of figure out what areas we need to attack and what may need to be released, what fascia needs to be released. Who was the one that said posture? It was you, correct? Or
no, but you can point.
Prolonged sitting?
Yeah.
So what happens if we
saves me.
What happens if we sit too long? So let's just take, for example, his position right here. What muscles are shortened in his body and what muscles are lengthened?
Hip flexors.
All right, so hip flexors are
tight.
short. What else might be shortened? Quads, okay. Hamstrings. In what sense though? Because he actually is flexed here, but then his knee is flexed. So his hamstrings are actually lengthened as they're coming into the glutes proximally, but they're shortened distally. Correct? Okay. What else?
Rectus abdominis.
The rectus abdominis is shortened, okay? That's a big one. So he's pretty much holding like a crunch position right now,
Yeah.
correct? So now if he's holding this crunch position for a long period of time and he goes to stand up, what might happen? It's tough, right? It's hard, because now if we talk about the muscles that are lengthened, your rectus spine is lengthened, the thoracolumbar fascia is lengthened, that proximal hamstring is lengthened, so that kind of posterior line is now lengthened. And those are the type of things that you'll see in his posture when he stands up, and even more so when you bring that into movement. Let's talk about the core, because Brandon touched on that too. What makes up our core?
Core and brain.
So I heard internal and external muscles. I heard a yawn and a point over here.
Rectus spinae, rectus abdominis.
Rectus spine, rectus abdominis. We
Internal
got two.
obliques, external obliques.
Internal, external obliques.
Transverse abdominis.
Lats, transverse abdominis.
Yeah.
Somebody
I
better.
learned that in kinesiology.
QL is one, yeah. There's one more I'm looking for. Starts with an M. I don't know which one it is.
Multi-fetus, fungus, whatever it's called.
Multivious.
Yeah, there you go.
With
That
with
one.
what? A B?
A P.
A P? Okay.
All those are great P ones, but no.
So,
Just
this
talk about
one.
it a little bit.
Pelvic floor.
Hey! Well done.
Thanks.
And no one said the biggest one. Starts with the G, it does. It's the glutes. It's the glutes. Big one. Big one is the glutes. But with that transverse abdominis, now it's been shown with a lot of these fascial lines that our body connects through that transverse abdominis. So our upper body and our lower body connect through there. Now if we're talking about the most basic function of a human being walking, what are the legs' primary function as movers for a human being? What is it?
I said to get you there, but that's
No, what's the primary function? What are they doing? Let's think plant.
Extension.
Flexion and extension, right? They're moving primarily sagittally. Like Brantley said, we do get transverse motion with the internal and external rotation, AB and abduction, but the primary function of our legs as it pertains to gait is sagittal plane motion. Now, if we take our upper body, what's the main function of the upper body?
Stabilize.
In gait, stabilize. If we're talking about that contralateral reciprocation, that
So now
Brantley
it's
mentioned, what is
transverse.
my upper body doing as I walk?
Movement. Rotation.
It's rotating.
Mhm.
So what's our upper body's main function as it pertains to gait? Rotation. What's your favorite sport? Anybody? Football. Football. Let's take a quarterback. What does a quarterback do when he throws the ball? What's the upper body do? What do the legs do?
Stabilize.
They split. They split, he throws the ball. Does this look like any other sport? Name them.
Baseball.
Javelin, baseball, tennis.
Overhead, all overhead sports, yeah.
Basically any sport, more or less, our legs are split and our upper body's rotating. Now with that being said, can you see the fault in using an overhead squat as an assessment for certain athletes and certain people? If they primarily do this, we need to be looking how this is coordinating together, if this is moving the same way bilateral, if it's equally bilateral, if there's balance in those movements and in those steps. So I would challenge you guys to start kind of experimenting with some other techniques on looking at motion, whether it's, a lunge with rotation or just even, hey, for example, just put someone on a treadmill. We're gonna do this later once, our guest friend comes. He's Brazilian, so he's probably gonna be a little late, but
Karen's like, no, not true.
no, yeah.
So, feeding off of one thing that I just heard Justin talk about, and we just mentioned, I had to write it down, torso stabilization. You were saying that the torso's job is to stabilize. Tell me if this is a stabilization activity or exercise or mobility. All right, then what would be a stabilization? Okay, so would you say I'm not working on stability here?
Yeah.
I am, right? And I'm also working on mobility. So coming back to this with stabilization with torso, mobility is stabilization in the right sense, and stabilization has to have mobility as well. So when we're looking at torso stabilization, it's really it needs to be able to move into this sense. And that's something that I think, especially coming through school, is something that stability and then I don't know, mobility or something through there. The two are so far off, and really they go hand in hand. So that's something that I want you guys to think about as well, especially when we get into these reciprocal motions like gait, because we want to make sure that we have that mobility and the stability going together, because the two really can be used interchangeably. All right, and then something I wanted to feed off of Justin when we were talking about, you can come back with that that band. So this kind of goes back into some myofascial lines or stretching of some sort of sense. So when somebody has something that's tight, what do we tell them to do?
Hold it.
Stretch. Why? It's tight. Okay, what's the tight muscle?
Shorten.
It's shortened. Okay, so how do they know that that muscle's tight? What makes us feel tightness?
Efficiency.
Efficiency?
Pain.
Pain? Okay. What makes us feel pain? Nerves. Good. How does that nerve get triggered?
Inflammation.
Inflammation, yeah, that is one. So biggest thing that I'm looking at when I talk about this, I like to say a tight muscle never sings. And I mean sings by it never yells out at you, because it's sitting in a short, compact position. When the sarcomere is being pulled on down into the muscle itself, it's yelling at you. So is that muscle actually short and tight, or is it long and taut? Long and taut. So if I have something where I'm feeling tightness in my hamstring because that thing's yelling at me because it's being pulled on, that sarcomere is being pulled on, and we're gonna go tell somebody to do this to a muscle that's already in this position, right? So what we need to be looking at is what is causing that muscle to be in that extended and in that taut position. And so that comes back to myofascial lines. But if you can look at the next thing with the hamstrings and the glutes having some sort of connection, the hamstrings and the calves having some sort of connection, maybe we should be looking at it elsewhere. So Justin, come over here for a sec. Actually, let's get a volunteer. I'll have you.
Bianco, thank you.
Come on up. All right, so I'm gonna have you face this direction, and I'm gonna have you step on this back here.
If you need him with all the shoes, just let him know.
Okay, so you hold this up here. So say this is the superficial back line minus the head through here. We're just really looking at the hamstring. Okay, and I've got something bound right here in his glutes. What part is he gonna feel pain on? Hamstrings, calf, somewhere along that line. Okay, so he's now got pain up here, he's got pain in the hamstrings, he's got pain in the calves. All right, let's stretch the calves. Achilles tendon, calves really starting to hurt. It feels good for a minute. And then we pull it more, and then all of a sudden, the thing pops and breaks. And we wonder, oh, well, let's start doing some eccentric stuff. Strengthen it back up again. What we need to find is this point here, because now that tautness has gone away. So that's one of the best things that I like about myofascial lines and what we're looking at those connections. Is can we find that point in the glute to start finding that little trigger point, that point that's actually short and tight. So if you guys do much manual therapy work, myofascial release, no manual fascial? Okay, gotcha. What about foam rolling? You can do that?
Yes,
Perfect.
we can show them how to foam roll, but we can't foam roll them.
Perfect. Okay, so if you guys found some spots on you with it, you get into a glute, maybe you get into TFL, you get into somewhere and you go, whoa, I had no idea that thing was lit up. Those are the spots we're looking for. Those are the spots that are short and tight that aren't yelling at us. Those are the spots that can start affecting all of these other areas along those fascial lines. So if we were to get into his glute here and he goes, my glute feels fine, it's my hamstring. And you start working on the glute, all of a sudden you get up and they walk and they go, hamstring feels way better. Or my calf feels way better. That's what we really want to start looking into. Does that make some sense to you guys?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Very good. All right, feeling relaxed one, man. You did a great job. So I just wanted to bring that, and that's What's that?
Excuse me. Are you stating that we find? Are you saying that we by doing the posture or the walk session, what do we call it?
Gait analysis.
You saying that's how we find it at first?
There's a number of ways that you can find it. So what I'll look at with the gait, first thing I'm looking at is the rhythm. You know, is there rhythm and timing? Is there an elegance of motion? And then I want to figure out, okay, there's clearly some sort of compensation pattern. Something doesn't look fluid. Why? Where? Where is this happening? Is it happening in the foot and ankle complex? Is it happening in the hips? Is it happening in the thoracic spine, the main movers of the body? And it may be happening in one, maybe happening in two, or maybe happening in all three. Then I need to figure out, okay, what's causing this? What part of the body isn't moving well? Where is it stuck? And I don't really look at elongating muscles much. I really think of stickiness in the body. I'm more looking at, can we allow things to glide and slide by one another? Can we change the chemistry of all the mucus that's in the body, whether it's really stuck and congealed or it becomes a runny liquid motion or runny liquid mucus? Because once it becomes that and things are starting to slide and glide by one another, then you free up. Because if we're stretching, quote unquote stretching, are we actually getting a lengthening of the muscle? Or the fascia, really? It takes, and I heard it was back in school, hopefully it's still the same, it was about 7.5 minutes for the creep cycle to set in. So if we're getting some sort of stretch, or we're doing some dynamic warm-up, are we actually getting a lengthening? No, so we know something else is happening there. And what's happening is that mucus is now changing from a thick, congealed substance to that runny nose. All right, so now we're sliding and gliding a lot better. That's why we originally started out, and I don't know how old some of you guys are, but if we started back and reach down, touch your toes, count to 10. And now we laugh at that. And we started doing dynamic warm-ups because we find that helps us move a lot better, and we're finding this flexibility because we're moving into a range of motion and coming back out. And now that we're learning that it's not really coming from an actual stretching of the muscle, it's coming from that change, that chemistry change into that liquid, now we can start addressing certain areas. So going back to what you were talking about, looking at that certain spot, oh, looks like he's got tight hip, short hip, something's not moving well through the hip. Let's open up a few of the lines there. Let's see if we can get the TFL, the rectus femoris, to start opening up a bit. Let's see if we can start moving into the frontal plane in and out a couple of times. Let's see if we can get into some posterior rotation and bring them back out again. And now let's have them walk again. What did that do to the body? What did that do to the foot and ankle complex, the hips, the thoracic spine? So we're gonna look at the body, we're gonna ask a question, we're gonna move them in some sort of way, and then we're gonna observe. And that's constantly what I'm doing. If you watch me do an evaluation, I have them walk about 5 or 6 times, sometimes 10 times, back and forth. We'll do 1 or 2 mobilizations, and I have them walk again. And I wanna know, what are they feeling, and what am I seeing? And the two don't always match up. Sometimes I see something drastically different, and at first I was just like, you don't feel that? You know, but now that's not what's important. I want to know what they're feeling to see if it matches up with what I'm seeing. And I don't get upset either way. Sometimes they go, wow, that feels amazing. And I go, man, it looked the same to me. I don't know, right? But that starts telling me a few things as you continue to practice. Any questions on that?
You guys want to see some of that? What that looks like?
Yeah.
You ever Roberto?
So you'll say that most of the time where the pain is not usually where the problem is.
Not always.
Not always,
It
but
can be.
yeah, it
So that's when
can.
you open up the line and see, like, okay, so like you said for him at the back, so instead like the palm was in the hip, so now you want to look down, like down the leg, or maybe
Yeah,
up.
so you guys have addressed, look at the joint above and below, or even 2 joints above and below. Same idea, same thing. That's still what we're looking at. So if we're looking at, I'll look at it in really 1 of 2 ways. The one where we're talking about the knot, so I want to know what's going along that line. Is something short and tight, and then what's long and taut. And then I want to know the other thing that we're talking about with the stickiness is something not sliding and gliding by those certain lines. And I look at them in lines. It's just much easier for me. The studies that I've been studying off of Tom Myers are really neat stuff. I encourage you guys to take a look at it, see what you think about some of that. But even if you don't want to jump down the myofascial lines and be like, oh yeah, myofascial lines, you still know that one part of the body can affect another part, which affects another part. And it's just lines to help us go along those pathways. So that's really what we're looking at. Can we slide and glide, or can we unlock the parts that are bound up because they're pulling on those sarcomeres that are giving us pain?
Make sense?
Yeah.
Can do a gait analysis?
Yeah, let's get Roberto up there. Let's get everybody to move to this side.
A squat.
Okay.
I feel like this ankle shifts out.
Okay.
So I think I don't have the equal amount of mobility on my left ankle. I mean on my right ankle. That's
Okay. Yeah, I got you.
yeah.
No worries. So what we'll do is you can continue taking all sorts of history. You guys have gone through history notes, trying to figure out what's going on here, what issues have you had in the past. Have you had any hip issues? Have you had thoracic spine issues? We can even get back into all the stuff. That's something that we'll do here, asking about all sorts of mental and emotional sides of things, biochemical, nutritional. We're not going to get into all of that today, and I'm going to skip a lot of the history that we'll typically do. But that's just more information, because really, at the end of the day, you can start coming up with all sorts of things. You're already talking about your foot sitting in this external rotated position. I'm thinking, let me look at the fibular head, let me see what's happening in the glute complex, all sorts of things that are already starting to go as a clinician. But really, what we're gonna do is have him walk and observe. That's the most important, is try not to have some sort of premeditated thought of this is the issue, this is what's going on. Because that'll kind of put you into a rut, and then you'll disappoint yourself when you don't get it, or it is right, or you'll try to force it one way or another. So Roberto, what I'm gonna have you, Roberto?
Yeah.
Okay. What I'm gonna have you do first is just walk back and forth for me. Yep, you're gonna be on the runway, and I know that's gonna be musically all the way down the road. And so,
You don't walk like that. You don't walk like that.
so when you're talking to somebody, when you're working with somebody,
Come on, man.
when you guys are working with somebody, even right now, it's much more dramatic. I do this one-on-one with somebody, and they're like, oh God, all right, am I doing this? What's going on? I need to look up. Let me get my shoulders back. All sorts of things. So what we'll do is I typically just keep walking. Just keep going. Don't even worry about it. I'm going to talk to you about it. You keep walking. So a lot of this, I'll start to try to have conversation with somebody. Like, talk to me about what sports you playing, how are your kids doing, what's going on. Have them start walking and talking, and then they're not thinking about it. They're doing this and that. You start to see their natural gait patterns happen. So as he's continuing to walk, what I want you to focus on is, what do you feel when you walk? I want you to become aware of what you feel when you walk. What are you feeling in your foot complex and your heels? Do you feel like one side of your body hits the ground harder than the other? You're spending more time on one side than the other. Do you feel like you're rotating more than one on more than one side? So as you start to become more aware of how your body feels, as we start making changes, you can go, oh yeah, that feels different from before. Or no, that feels the same. Because that's going to come back into what I was talking about. I want to see, how does it feel versus what I'm seeing. All right, so you keep going. Just keep swimming with it back and forth. And I'm just going to start working on that pump. I'm going to start spitting out a few things that I see and that I look at. So really what I'm looking at right now, I'll start in the foot and ankle complex. Sometimes the hips, it all depends. But you're taking a look at his right foot. It sits more in that externally rotated position as he walks through. Then my eyes really jump up to his thoracic spine. There's not much thoracic spine rotation happening. So it's really a big, almost stabilization in the torso. So why is he stabilizing in the torso?
Relax.
It's all good, man. Just keep swimming. You're good. So if he's not stabilizing the torso, that means, or if he is stabilizing the torso, that means he's not stabilizing into the pelvic floor and into the hips. He's not able to get that rotation, those reciprocal motions, engaging those sling patterns that Justin and I were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, you should be.
One day, you just keep walking, man. All right, so what I'm gonna have you do, now come on back over here, Roberto. All right, what I'm gonna have you do is see this line in the carpet here? I want you to do, this is my version of an overhead squat. We're not squatting. It's okay. I want you to sit and reach your hands to a comfortable position and come back up. I don't care if you go to 90. I don't care if your weight's back on your heels. I don't care if you go into an anterior tilt first. I just want you to bend your knees, allow you to sit, reach your hands forward to a comfortable position where you start to feel tension somewhere in the body, and then come back up.
All right.
All right, go ahead.
Does it matter?
Keep your feet forward, yeah. Very good. Come on back up. And now I'm gonna have you turn face toward the TV, do the same thing. Good. Come on back up. Now I'm gonna have you turn and face that direction. If you pick a spot on the carpet, So this is the one that I use the most as the posterior view. I'll tell you guys why. Good. Now come on back up, and I want you to do that one more time.
Facing.
Still that same direction, and it really won't be you guys that are gonna be able to see this too much. Take a look at his right glute and his hip. See how it gets hung up just a bit on that right side? So what I'm really looking at is his pelvis able to flare? Can it open? Because that pelvis needs to flare for a number of reasons when we go down into a squatted position. So if we're not flaring through here, this right hip here is a little hung up on him. So he gets into this position, the left hip will continue to go down, and that right hip gets a little gumped up. So one thing that we also notice, just looking at patterns, which is what I'm looking for right now, what patterns can I find in the body? Foot sits in that externally rotated position with that right leg. He's also got a little bit of boundness going on into that right glute complex, maybe some sort of pattern developing there. Next thing that I want you to do, feet in this forward position about hip width apart. I want you to slide your hips from side to side, allowing your hands to run down, just back and forth. So really what I want to look at here is he able to get into the frontal plane? What's happening? Do we have some sort of restriction into the TFL region, the ITB? Or is he starting to rotate and get into one of the glutes a bit more because his TFL won't let him get into that position? He seems to be fairly even for the most part, but then I'll also ask him, do you feel like you're getting into both sides the same, or do you feel like you can get into one side a bit easier? Okay, very good. So what I'll look at is his pant line here. As he gets out and to the right, you'll notice that his pant lines stay about even. As he gets out to the left, that left hip will go a bit higher. So what that's telling me is that his TFL is allowing him, you can turn around, show everybody, yeah, show it off. Look at that left TFL, things opening up. So that's perfect, that's what we want to see on that left side. On his right side, so I'll show you guys over here. As he gets over to the spot, now keep going, you can just shift on over. Good, drive those hips out. Good, drive it out there. Good, drive it out there. So you'll see that tilt back and forth, but he's not getting quite as much on that right side. So that's again just something that I'm putting. Yeah, the hip, he'll shift it, but he won't actually allow it to come up, and so that TFL doesn't want to free up. So one thing that I'll look at, you can relax for a second. So there I start thinking, can the TFL slide and glide? I'm not, you guys try to lengthen IT bands?
No.
All right, thank God. Good. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that the ITB is not grabbing onto the vastus lateralis. It's not grabbing onto the hamstrings itself. Can it slide and glide there? Because there are some fascial connections there and it gets stuck. So we're looking at that fascia being really stuck and it's no longer hydrated, so we can't get that slide and glide anymore. So we're probably going to deal with something else on his right side again. So we got a pelvis that doesn't want to flare too much. It's sitting in an externally rotated position on the right side. And he also can't get into that TFL quite as much on that right side. And we're dealing with left foot pain, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of people will start to say, whoa, why aren't we going toward the left ankle? Why aren't we dealing with the left side of the body? We think maybe that he's using that left side of the body a bit more because he's not able to get into the right side. If his right hip is going to be flared up, and now he's able to sit down into that left side a bit more, and he's squatting, and now, say you're, make it easy, say you're squatting 200, no, nothing against you. Yeah, and he's got 100 pounds on the right, 100 pounds on the left, and now he's dealing with 125 pounds on the right, or excuse me, 125 pounds on the left side a bit more, because he's got more weight on that side, and he's consistently doing this, developing these compensation patterns that aren't translating back to some reciprocal motions because it's a sagittal plane dominant exercise. So now we're starting to deal with a few things there. So we got to take a look at, I'm going to be looking a lot at the right side of your bodies to see if we can take off pain to the left side. All right, that makes some sense as to the direction and why I'm going there. Yep, kind of going up and over a bit. Yep, any questions so far? No? Okay, so next one that I'm going to have you do, just a little stripper move here, all right? Great. So what you need to do, you're going to put your hands here. You're going to have knees nice and straight. You're going to have a flat back. You're going to sit your sit bones straight back and then bring yourself forward again. I want you to see how this feels, all right? So hands up here. And you can turn those feet forward a bit. Very good. So knees are going to be nice and straight. You're actually going to lock them out. And I know that's not something that we do a lot, but I want you to lock this out here and drive those sit bones straight back, eyes up, chest up for me. Good, so you notice how his knees bend right away? So that's telling me that superficial back line goes, I'm not getting there. Now come on back up for me, nice and easy. Left side?
Yeah.
Both sides?
About even.
Okay, very good. And now come back up again. I want you to go nice and easy, about 3 seconds back and then 3 seconds forward. There you go. And then you're gonna bring yourself up again. Because again, we're not trying to stretch this tissue at all. If we're stretching tissue, we're actually tearing it. We're not trying to create any tears. We just want to get into a position and come back out. Now what I'm gonna have you do is drive your sit bones back again. You're gonna be in the same position. Drive those sit bones back, keep these knees nice and locked for me. Go back to about like a 5 or 6 out of 10. A 10 being that thing's gonna rip if it goes any farther, 1 being the first bit of tension. Drive those sit bones back for me. Good, good, eyes up, chest up, right there. Now we're gonna shift your weight over to your right side. I want you to keep that right knee. That's not going anywhere, is it? All right, now let's head on over to your left side. That goes a lot farther. All right, go ahead and relax. So we've got left-sided pain, right side won't move at all. Left side's the one that's giving him an issue. So we're now only doing.
I want to point one thing out. As he just came up from there, did you see how he said, like, I felt it in my left hamstring? So a lot of times you guys would, or people think, oh, the left side's tight, because he's like, oh, it feels tight to that left side. But in reality, what's happening is he can actually move into that left side, so he gets that tension. But like Brantley's saying, his issue is he's stuck to that right side. But he's like, the tightness is through the left side. So what might he do? You know, logically thinking, start trying to stretch that left hamstring and trying to create more mobility through his left side, which would now accentuate his issues and his problems.
And so going back to patterns, and something that we would look at a lot is the body's always looking for that balance, that homeostasis. So if we have a right gluteal restrictiveness of some sort, 9 times out of 10, I'm gonna find some sort of restriction onto the TFL or rectus femoris, somewhere into the hip flexors region on the opposite, just because the body is saying, I can't move this way, but I've got this all day. All right, so now what I wanna do, I'm gonna take you into an exercise. We'll start light, just to open up that right side for you. So same position, you'll be right here. What I want you to do is cross your left foot over your right. Knees are gonna be nice and straight, especially that back one. The left one can kind of do whatever it likes. And I want you to drive those sit bones back to about that 6 out of 10, and then bring yourself forward. Just easy in, easy out.
So as he's doing this, what would you guys describe what he's doing as? What is Roberto doing? How would you name this exercise?
There you go, bring yourself back up. You sit all the way up here. Good, and go back again.
No one's saying anything really loud. Say that one time.
Flat back. Feel that all along that right
But,
side.
all right, but what is his action? Is he strengthening? Is he stretching? Is he mobilizing? Is he?
I want you to go more towards
So instead of more stretching,
it's going to get even more into the lateral glute complex. All right, head
he's
on
gonna go
back.
dynamic movement. So now think about this for a second. If we have these restrictions through here, we talked about hydration before.
Back up.
Think of the muscles as being like sponges. So if this right side has been restricted, it has a bunch of those knots in there, it's not going to get its proper hydration that it needs. So it's like a dry sponge, right? So now it doesn't want to move. It doesn't want to get into there. How could we get more hydration into a sponge? Well, as it extends and then it comes back, as it extends and it comes back, it flushes blood out, it pulls mucus, blood into it. And we're gently creating hydration into this hamstring. So like if I looked at this and I'm like, what's he doing? I'm like, he's mobilizing this right posterior line to get hydration and mobilization out of it. To start kind of mobilizing, I was assuming to start hydrating those lines.
Just slightly, so that way it doesn't. You're feeling on the inside? So that's your deep front line of the body. So this is one thing that he was just talking about. While Justin was talking with you guys, I had him driving his hips back toward 6 o'clock, so I always like to think you're the middle of a clock. Which way are we driving ourselves? He's driving himself straight back to a 6 o'clock position. Then I said, let's take yourself over to a 5 o'clock position a bit more. So now we're starting to add a little bit more lateral to open up that right glute complex. As soon as we started doing that, he started noticing a little bit of tension on the inside adductor VMO region. You guys think of why you could have some tension there?
On the right leg?
On his right leg?
No, stretching enough.
not wrong. So what he was getting there is as he's getting into that right glute complex, so if he's driving out into this direction, your glutes, your adductors, they really act as a pulley system. So if one gives, the other, if the other starts to grab, the other's got to give. So you're gonna slide that up there, you're gonna floss me, dude. What do you do with the hands? So the adductors, lateral line, glute complex, anything through here, it's going to go back and forth as we're into this position. Now this is exaggerated, but we still have some frontal plane motion when we walk. We walk three-dimensionally even though it's a sagittal plane dominant position. So as he's coming back and forth, there's got to be a little bit of frontal plane motion, a little bit of internal and external rotation happening at the hips as well. So what he's getting is a pull into that VMO, into that that adductor region. So that makes me think of two things. One, that deep front line, that core, especially I see with a lot of powerlifting activities, that really starts to become calcified and hard. And we'll get into the calcification of certain muscles and things later. But now, if he's not having that give in that adductor complex and the glute complex is locked up, it's almost a chicken and the egg, which came first. It really doesn't matter because if one's locked up, the other's going to be locked up. So that's something that we'll address in a few, is start saying, now can we add some hydration into the adductors? And then let's see what something like that looks like. So first now, what I'm going to have you do is walk again. Okay. So back and forth, back to the runway. And again, what's important is what do you feel? That's really what I want to know from them. I'm going to take a look as to what I see. And sometimes you see a difference, sometimes you don't.
What does somebody say over there?
So he's swinging his hands more.
He's moving a little bit more to his upper body.
Mm-hmm.
Did we touch the upper body?
Yeah, so now he's got a little, I mean, we're still going to work on that swag, but swag is coming. How's it feel, Wally?
Feels good. It's just like I kind of feel warm on this side because
Yep. It's firing. Why else do you feel warm? Getting blood fluid. Perfect. Hydration. Hydration is huge. When we talk about the hydration of fascia, the hydration of muscles, if the fascia is clamped down on the pathways for blood flow to get into that area, or for the lymphatics to clear out any inflammation and swelling, then that is literally going to become a dehydrated muscle, and it's eventually going to calcify, essentially. So it's not going to be able to eccentrically load, concentrically contract, and really work. Once we gave it a little bit of space and allowed things to open up, gave the fascia a little bit of space there to stop clamping down, now that area is starting to be a bit more hydrated. And the thing that I noticed the most is now that right foot isn't quite as much externally rotated. That came back just a bit. Very good. All right, so next thing that I want to take you into, we'll give this one a go. All right, I'm going to need this box. So this is probably the hardest. I call these fascial mobs. So that's what we were doing there. I don't really call it a stretching because we're just trying to mobilize the fascia. We get really caught up in stretching and thinking we need to elongate and hold. So that's why I try to get away from using the word stretching as much. So this next fascial mobilization, we're going to hit in toward that adductor group, really kind of all the way up into the pelvis. So what we're going to go for here, this is the best way to show you guys. I'm going to have you right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to have your left foot pointing forward. Your right foot is going to start to externally rotate, but only to the point right before your hips start to turn out, because we want those hips to stay forward. And these are going to be slightly bent on this left side just so it's soft. Hips are going to be into a neutral spine position, so we're going to come into a slight posterior rotation. And what we're going to do is just slide our hips slightly into the frontal plane. Already being in this position, you're going to feel some tension along those adductors. Man, I did too. And as you slide those hips into the frontal plane, you can start to take your torso and your head slightly to the right towards your foot and come back. Now, I know that was a mouthful, and I'll walk you all through it again. Don't worry. Come on over to this side, because they'll be able to see it either way. So that left foot's going to be pointing forward. Right foot's up there. Let me know if you're all right with these socks. I can do it. So hips are going to be under you into a neutral spine position. So you can already see your hips want to turn to the right. I want you to square them up perfectly forward. So hips rotated underneath in order to turn your hips to the left just slightly. Do you feel tension on here already?
No, not too much.
Okay, so now you're going to come up onto your heel. There you go. Good, and we're gonna turn those hips back. Feel any tension now? Slight bend in the knee just so it's not locked out. Now we're not gonna bend that knee anymore. Your body is a clever cheater, and what it's gonna wanna do as we slide the hips into the frontal plane is it's gonna wanna bend the knee, or he's gonna wanna dump into his glutes, and he's gonna wanna rotate, his right glute. He's gonna wanna dump back into that side. So what I want you to do is we're gonna slide our hips just slightly to the left, playing with the tension that's already there. Good, come right back. That's it, no, you're good right there. We're gonna slide our hips to the left. There. You might get that much movement, that's fine. All right? So all we're doing is we're playing with the tension that's already there in that position. So we just want to get a little bit of hydration into that area. So if that fascia is stuck like this on his hands, if we like this into his groin area, if we can start getting a little bit of sliding and a little bit of pull, then we're going to start to add a little bit of hydration into that fascia. All right? So let's do that a couple more times. Good. Come right back. And you stay soft. Now as you slide that hip to the left, a little bit of the upper body goes to the right, just to counterbalance. Good. There. Come right back. So I'm going to help him out by pushing on the femur just a bit. Same thing. Good. Feeling that there? Doing all right? What is that on a pain scale out of 10, or not pain, but stretching scale?
5, 6.
Perfect. That's where we want to be. And what we want to do is we want to get into the position and then come back out. Let you relax and walk around for a second. We want to get into that position and come back out. We don't want to hold stretches, especially in like a 7 or above, because now the brain's going, ow, that spot hurts. I don't want to go back there. So now we're creating a neuromuscular pattern where the brain is saying, no, let's not go there. But if we get into a position lightly and come right back out, then the brain's saying, all right, you're trying to help me. We're going into a safe spot. We're coming back. This isn't going to be a lot of pain. I can relax into this position and come back out of it. How's that feel?
You good? I feel like my ankle's not cracking on my right one now.
Very good. So all we've done is address his right glute and then into his right adductor group. We're already noticing more thoracic spine rotation, and now you're feeling less tension onto the right side. Perfect. So this is what we keep doing. I just keep going into different spots. Where do we want to address next? What I'll do now is I'll throw him up onto the table. I want to take a look at his feet. What's happening in that first ray? Is his first ray able to move? Is his midfoot able to unlock? What's happening in his subtalar? Is that able to move? How does that compare bilaterally? How much I keep going, but I don't know where.
But how's everyone feeling? Y'all overloaded? Everyone need to go use the restroom?
Need a couple minutes.
How long would a session last?
The first evaluation, you can relax or keep walking if you want. It feels good. First evaluation, I always book out till about an hour and a half. Sessions last an hour, but the first one, it takes a bit more time because I got to figure out what's going on, and I got to ask those questions as well. There would be no problem on just giving him some exercises to do, and I know if we hit this one coming through here, this one coming across, I even get him into a neutral spine and start to get into the anterior lines, that we're going to make some changes, but I want to know specifically what are his patterns, why are his patterns there. So through school and everything, we always focus on the what. We're always trying to evaluate. If you have chondromalacia, patellofemoral syndrome, you've got a lateral ankle sprain, you've got popping hip syndrome, whatever. There's all these whats. And docs love telling people what they have. And a lot of people want to know what they have, which is all right. But then we got to go, okay, why did it get there? How did it happen? And
How do we get it out of it?
how do we get it out there? And unfortunately, with physical therapy nowadays, there's been a lot of, you have this, here's your set of exercises. Let's make sure you know how to do those exercises. All right, that's all the money we're getting out of the insurance company. Goodbye. Yep, and that's really unfortunate for a lot of people. But what we want to do is figure out exactly what's happening, why is this happening, and I really don't ever evaluate anymore in the sense of the what's. I do it quickly just to make sure that I'm not dealing with an ACL, something that needs imaging right away. But I'm not trying to say, oh, okay, you got impingement syndrome. Is it actually coming from the bicep? Is it coming from the bursa? Is there nerve inflamed, supraspinatus? I don't need to try to really target that down, because we're going to address it in the same way. I'm going to take a look at what's causing that strain along the body.
I'm gonna just build. Does anyone need to use the restroom? You guys want like a 5-10 minute break or? Yeah, let's take a little 5-10 minute. Use the restroom, grab some water. Post on your Instagram. Yeah, we'll take a little 10 minutes. But yeah, middle break. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate y'all coming to listen to us. I value your guys' time. I value you guys being here. This is this whole place, man, is a new venture that me and Brandon started, trying to just bring these ideas and overall health to everybody in Orlando, and we would really appreciate it if y'all wouldn't mind, whether checking in on Facebook or your Instagram, stuff like that. So if y'all could do that, man, that'd be awesome. Let me go grab Coach Diaz. Second thing. When you guys are doing your assessments and everything else, and this actually builds on something Brantley said earlier, on how our feet or our foot positions affect the entire kinetic chain, from the tibia to the femur to the glutes to the TFLs to the shoulder to the core. If we put on a shoe that, let's say, has an arch built into it and it puts our foot into this position, is that going to skew some of our results? Or if we, let's say, even if we try to do a lunge, but we're wearing a shoe and that lunge holds my foot out here, what's going to happen to my glute as compared to if my foot is free to kind of move? So that's just something to think about when you guys are doing working out or doing your exercises or your assessments. Man, have people barefoot. That's kind of how we popped out. That's how we came into this world. That's how we naturally move, and our feet are so important. And if we stick them in shoes and we restrict the movements, it's going to affect our whole system, really. What we're gonna do, we're gonna bring Rodolfo in. He's I don't know if you guys are into the martial arts world or nothing, but he really needs no introduction. He's multiple-time world champion. Now he's fighting MMA, man. We're so happy to have him here. But what we're gonna do, we're gonna have him kind of just walk on the treadmill, and I want you guys to take some of the ideas and some of the things that you heard Brantley talking about, and we're just gonna kind of look and talk about what we see and what we do. He's a perfect example of somebody that has trained one way for so long that has become so extraordinarily good at moving in just one way, which is like smash. So he smashes better than anybody, but when we, try to have him move into just some simple motions, the rotation of the upper body through lunges, you're gonna see how, functionally speaking, it's use some work, some hydration. Okay? Do you mind taking a picture of that?
Все на черный пояс и на тяжелом весе, почему мы сами приседаем.
So all we're gonna do, I'm just gonna have you walk on the treadmill. It goes by itself, so be careful. I'm just gonna have you hold on at first. Hold on and start walking normal. Let's have everybody move to the back. So what I want everybody to think about, just if you see, swinging, Brett talked about the eloquence of motion. I want you to tell me if you see eloquence of motion. Are the legs coming into extension the same way? Are the feet hitting the same way? When you're listening to someone walk on a treadmill, you can actually listen for the difference in like cadence. So you might hear like a slide, boom, slide, boom, slide, boom. That means that something isn't firing the same way. We're missing a little eloquence of motion. Ben, I might have to come back here too, because you're the master and the teacher. One thing that I really like to point out to people, this happens a lot. And because we're human beings and because we do sit a lot, this is our nature, it's sitting, right? We go to school, we work at desk, we sit at that computer, we come home, we sit down at the table for dinner, we're always kind of in that big flex position. A second concept that's what's happening in life is gravity. Gravity is constantly pushing us down as well. So even someone like Rodolfo, who's obviously not overweight or fat by any means, you can see that he has compression through here. So one thing that we tend to work on is how do we decompress that spine? How can we get that spine longer as it pertains to what we're talking about back injury? How can we take some of that compression that occurs as a human being, especially as a martial arts practitioner, and start to lengthen that out? And if you think about that huge rotate, our body is fall through rotation. As we sit and we're in those flex positions like we talked about earlier, the abdomen is shortened down, and so as the hip flex is shortened down, and that chain brings us into this position. And like what Brenda talked about, if our shoulders come forward, we'll end up in this high body posture. And you'll actually see this a lot with a lot of the population, unless they're actively trying to do things to counteract that. But just start calling some things out. What do you guys see one side versus the other? How's this thoracic motion? Is the thoracic going more one way than the other? Does one lat potentially look maybe more defined or sticking out more than another? Does one lat sit lower than another? Or is it shoulders level? Do you guys see any differences in the individual? Are the rhomboids sitting at the same height, or is one more moving? It's a tricky treadmill. He's pretty athletic, but it takes a while to get used to walking on. So some of that glitch just comes from him getting used to the treadmill. Okay, yes, we have the right foot here harder. Why might that be? We have an imbalance, and maybe that he has what we call like an apparent leg discrepancy. I mean, and I'm really going super basic here. But he catapults, and then he'll come down harder on that right. And that again, that's a what to dive into the whys. Back to what Brandon was talking about. Okay, can he slide into that TFL? Does he have hydration getting into his deep front lines? Does he have one adductor tighter than another one? You could relax it off. Especially with fighters, martial artists, they're typically, dominant one side. So if we have someone here and they're constantly throwing one way or training in a certain way, you're going to see those discrepancies. So now if we have discrepancies in the body and the whole body is connected, so our body, if we think of it as a whole, these fascial lines, if I change one thing on Brandon's body and I crunch this down, does something change here? Does something change here? Does something change here? Does that change here? Does that change here? Does that change what happens at his neck? If I tilt this way, I still need to walk straight, my neck moves. So we can't have one discrepancy in the body that's not going to change the rest of the body. Which means we can't treat the body as, we just need to loosen this one part. We need to look at the body as a whole. So now as we get into exercise protocols and exercise techniques, we need to ask ourselves, what type of exercises are we doing, and are we incorporating the entire body together in the right postures and with the right cues to allow the body to regain tensegrity throughout. We talked about long taut muscles. So we have that knot in the glute and the example of the long taut hamstring. Is he gonna have the same tensegrity in this hamstring as he will on the left? It is going to be off. But how do we bring that into balance? Do we just bring it in by doing hamstring curls on this side? We can't do that. It has to come through proper movements, what would be called functional movements. And when me and Brenton think about functional movements, we're thinking about how the human body has gone through evolution to move. And at the most basic level, it's walking. At a more advanced level, it's running. So when I run and I take this step, what happens with my upper body? What hand comes forward? The right one, okay. What happens to my left one? It comes back, all right? So now can you do me a favor? Throw a right cross and hold. Does this look similar?
Yeah.
Okay, now let's take the football example. Does this look similar at all? Okay, so the way that the human body is designed to move, it's designed to rotate.
Do a bench press.
Okay, let me have you please lie on the floor. It's on the back.
I was more saying like do the bench press.
Let him bench press me? So, think about doing a bench press. Okay, is this functional? Is the bench press a functional exercise? It's not?
Yes.
It is. Okay. Who's on the no side and who's on the yes side? Let's make this the no side. The rubbers, no. The carpets, yes. Let's move. Let's see. Is the bench press a functional exercise? Let's have some fun. Do it that. Rubbers, no. The carpets, yes. He's both, so he's playing the fence. Alright, so we got a few no's and we got a whole more yeses. Okay. Now, if we think about if the marker of function for a human being is the gait cycle, survival, running, explain to me how the bench press mirrors that or mimics that. Someone from the yes side. And I'll give you the chance to move if you want to move. Do we, with a bench press, do we get any contralateral reciprocation?
No.
Okay. Do we allow his shoulder blades to move as he's moving his arms? I heard a yes and no. No. So we fixed his shoulder blades to the floor. We've taken the hips out of the equation. He's lying on his back. Now him being a fighter, he needs power. So we talked about these fascial lines, right? So if we have a chest that connects down into this adduct all the way through here. So this whole chain contracts to allow him to throw a punch. At the same time, on the opposite side, his lat is pulling back, connecting to this glute, this hamstring, and this calf. So we have shortening through this anterior X factor line and this posterior X factor line. So now as a fighter, if I load him up a weight, and he's strong, he can probably bench press quite a bit, but I load this up, I make sure that his shoulder blades can't move, I take his hips out of the equation. I would love for one of you guys to explain to me how that's gonna help him throw a harder punch. And then my next question is, are you sure you don't wanna move over there?
Strengthening the band, it's making it.
What band are we strengthening?
Well, we were just talking about the band that goes down here. If you think about it like a rubber band,
Right.
the thicker the rubber band, the more tension.
Where is the rubber band gonna be thickening it?
It'll be thickening over the top.
Okay, so at the same time. So now these are gonna pull in,
It's
correct?
gonna pull.
Okay. Now have you incorporated that tension that we've now gained here with any other part of the body?
I mean, it's all connected.
Listen up, please be respectful of this question, guys.
So
This is actually pretty good.
it's all connected. So I mean.
But have we connected it here or have we disconnected it? So now if I've shortened these muscles and I haven't taken into account any of those muscles, now what happens through that chain?
Can you explain an eccentric to a load to unload?
A load to unload, right. So, but can you see what I'm talking about there? And I'm not saying don't bench press, you can't bench press, it's the worst thing, but how many people have hurt their shoulders bench pressing that you guys have seen? How many people bench press heavy and like, my shoulders are killing me? And the reason is one, man, you fixed the shoulder blades, you've taken out of account how the body is supposed to move. We're gonna get to load, unload, but if I shorten up those chest muscles on both sides, now we could reinforce that fighting posture that we tend to be in anyway as human beings from sitting and everything else. And then lastly, if these get shortened, and so it's like that little knot in the rubber band, that whole other line is now going to be put on a little bit of tension because this chest has been shortened. So now, for example, you know, that could mess up our gait cycle. That could restrict the ability for him to now come into rotation in his thoracic spine. And that's going to eventually lead to injuries in the future. If the body can't move equally bilaterally with tensegrity throughout, we're opening ourselves up for injuries. In my opinion, and again, this is my opinion, the only way that we can create that is through taking into account the gait cycle, how the body was designed to move through the evolutionary process, and making exercises like that. So just to show a quick example of, you know, maybe what we could do for chest training, and again, this wouldn't be, you know, strong enough for someone like him, and you don't even have to do this, but man, if I'm here, I got my rib cage turned, I'm tall through here, this chest is forward, you know, now as this pulls back, man, stepping through, punching. Now I'm getting chest training, but I'm taking into account the gait cycle, sequencing of muscles, how that moves. And like we said, we can make this, you know, as heavy as he could do while maintaining good postures without flying or moving or anything like that. We can add kettlebells into it as different drivers. And again, this is the challenges and the things I want you guys to start thinking of. How can you come up with exercises that take into account how we have been designed to move to help somebody like him be even better at his sport without the risk of injuries. Now, at first sight, he looks very fit, correct? Do you think he has, does anything hurt you? Any pain? Hip? All right, so he's got hip pain. Now, when we talked about when he was walking on the treadmill, we had a clunk, 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 clunk. Now that should get you thinking, okay, why is he clunking? What's going on? What's wrong with the hip, if you don't mind me saying?
I don't know exactly what it is.
It feels tight. Now, I've had the honor and the benefit of working with him, but I know that he has a super tight adductor on this side. It's locked up. It comes from years of training jiu-jitsu, passing certain ways, fighting, the style of what he's done throughout his life. He fights, I sit, so we have our own, conversations and things like that. But these are the things that, you need to start thinking about. All right, so he said, okay, he has a tight adductor. So let's say this adductor starts pulling him in this way. What might we see compensate on this outside now? Now what might we see on this side? What happens over here? So although this has a tight adductor, now this TFL might get locked up, and then we can get into the mobs like Brantley was showing. This has now become lengthened. Because of that, maybe one shoulder sitting lower than the other, and now the neck compensates. And now we're looking at the body as a whole organism, as opposed to, we had foot pain, or we had a knee pain, or we had a hip pain, or something of that sort. Let me have you face this wall, and let's put both feet on the line. Now again, we're just gonna take what Brandon showed you guys earlier, and I just want you to do a little squat, reach forward. Now as he does this, so let's push your butt back towards them and reach forward and then just come up. See if you see any discrepancies one side versus the other. Like Brandon was talking about, is one glute higher than the other? Come up from it. That's all. Like, keep 10 reps. Just keep. So can you guys see some discrepancies? Back. So now we have a world-class athlete, world champion, one of the best that's ever done it. Man, but we have discrepancies in his motion. Now as practitioners, if we could balance this out, does he become better at his sport? Is he more fluid at what he does? If we have one muscle that's taut and under tension, or it's lengthened and it's under tension, we already talked about we don't have the tensegrity in that muscle. Can that muscle now fire as well as it could if it was balanced? The answer to that one is going to be no. So, these are the things that I want you guys thinking about as you go through your exercise prescriptions, as you start breaking people down, as you watch them move. Any questions from anybody? I'm kind of talking here.
I heard strength. Strength's a big word that we always talk about. We need to get people stronger. Specifically for that fighting motion. When we talk about the bench press, we're like, that's kind of like a punch. What would make us stronger in that sense, just by being able to, I talk about sequencing into that area, or being able to have into that, we're talking about strength. You want to keep going on that? Or?
I'm going to open up to the floor. Does anyone want to address that?
We talk about that was one of the first things somebody said back in the beginning. I wrote it down, was strength.
So what is strength? As you talked about eloquence of motion, Brandon also has an eloquent definition of it. So I'm going to let him throw it out there. That's Brandon. Adolfo's not going to answer. Definition of strength. What's strength? You asked him about.
That was balance. That was my word.
What's balance?
Balance is the ability to move within the threshold of the tissue. That's balance. There's really no such. I hate when people jump on a boost ball and start doing this and say, I'm working on the balance training. This is balance training. We had to do this back and forth. This is balance training. This is balance training. Being able to move, maintain mobility and stability, that's all balance training. It's moving within the threshold of your tissue. So if you have somebody doing some crap like this, trying to move and get into these positions and you come back and get into a posterior tilt and you're trying to load some lateral lines and all this, they're going all over the place and can't maintain it. They're working outside the threshold of their tissue. And same thing when we're talking about strength. Yes, you can make somebody hypertrophy, or you can start working on bench press with certain things, but strength to me is integrated movement. being able to move from the ground up. So if I can sequence something, if somebody's gonna throw a punch, and they throw a punch at me like this, I'll laugh. If somebody gets back here and uses their entire kinetic chain to throw that punch, now I'm running. I'm 5'8", like 105 pounds. It's no good. I'm getting knocked down. So what we need to be able to do is develop some exercises that allow us to move from the ground up to have strength, integrated exercise patterns. That's what we'll do in through here. When we're talking about strength with certain athletes, we're going to take a kettlebell after they're able to move, after we've freed up those myofascial lines. Because first we got to make sure they can move so that, or we got to make sure that they can breathe so that way they can move. Before they can load, they have to be able to move. So we got to go breathe, move, and then load. So one of the worst things that you could do, this over here, is say we're going to try to strengthen an athlete who doesn't know how to move yet, who has compensation patterns, whose pelvis can't flare, their tibia can't go into an internally rotated position, they can't eccentrically load the glutes, they can't get into a neutral spine, and we're going to put them into this position here, and then we're going to do this over and over and over again, driving home this position right here. And then we're going to have them fight like this. Terrible. What we need to do is get them into a neutral spine position, have them being able to move, go back and forth with some sort of load to unload. So maybe that now looks like this. Being able to engage some sling patterns, because this almost looks like something like that. And I know that was a terrible punch, I'm sorry. But, yeah.
So we talked about how gravity is already pushing humans down all the time, right? Now, if he loads that bar on top of his shoulders, are we getting more compression or less compression? We're getting more compression. And I want to go on record of saying man, if you're a power lifter and if your goal is to squat as much as you can and bench as much as you need to squat and bench. And I'm not saying that's not the way. Me and Brantley both come from an injury background and an injury perspective. So in our minds is how can we get people to perform athletically at the best of their ability without hurting themselves. So I would say a lot of this doesn't apply if you're a bodybuilder, if you're a power lifter.
No, it does.
To a degree. I'll take
yeah,
that. But
you mind if I bounce off that real quick? So with powerlifting, with bodybuilding, what we think of as exercise with certain things, those are sports. A bodybuilder is an athlete. A power lifter is an athlete. Athletics really doesn't balance out the body. You get all sorts of compensation patterns for the body. Without the mental side of things and cardio and all the other stuff, you're gonna get some bad stuff that comes from sport. Don't matter what sport it is. But what we're trying to do here is to be able to balance out the body so that way you can go do all of those sports. So if you like participating in bodybuilding, even if you don't go to bodybuilding competitions, or you like getting on a bench press, or you like doing some arm curls or some Arnold curls, or whatever you like doing through bodybuilding, that's fine. It's no problem at all, but we gotta make sure that, can we get back to that neutral spine position? Can we move with reciprocal motions? Can our body move efficiently? Is it able to heal? Do we have adaptability in our tissue so that way we can heal? So that way we can play with our kids, we can reach down, we can get on the floor, we can get back up. We can carry groceries, we can do all sorts of things. Are we able to allow that tissue to be able to heal? So that's one of the biggest things that we'll get in here. So we don't want you to think that, hey, we're completely against powerlifting, we're against bodybuilding or the traditional sense of weightlifting. We just typically don't do that here for what we're trying to accomplish. All right? Keep going.
Let's have everybody come on the rubber progression, play with some exercises that incorporate pump body, lower extremity, reciprocal motions, and we're just going to do it. I want you guys to think about it, to feel the same on both sides. If your feet are able to maintain on the floor, sports contact, if you can coordinate what compensations that you feel are present, just to kind of play around with some of the stuff that we do. So if you guys are gonna instruct somebody to, let's actually have like the front row move up a little bit, because we're actually gonna play with some lunging. So everyone make sure that you have enough space. How would you guys instruct somebody to do a lunge?
Anybody raise their hand? Who wants to demonstrate how to do a lunge? Come up and teach me how to do it.
I'm gonna pick somebody. Do it. Just do it. No one's right or wrong. We're all learning here. Safe environment. Just do a lunge. It's just.
I always want to out barefoot too, because the shoe is so bad. So first, alright, you would take a step forward and sort of let gravity hit the floor down, and like make sure you don't smack into the ground. Some people like to lean forward to focus on the muscle group. Some people like to do it up here and then.
That's perfect. Good. Does everyone, was that a good lunge? Would everyone say that's a good lunge? Yeah, no, it's alright. Different ideas.
Pull down straight.
Okay. So now let's take that same lunge and let's try to make it more functional. So if we take into account, let's say gait cycle again, as I step, we have the upper body rotation. How can we incorporate this into the lunge?
Walk first.
First with the Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that would be even more basic than that. How can we just like we're walking?
Straight body weight lunge.
Yeah, straight body weight lunge. And I mean, the answer is actually pretty simple. It's just like as if we were taking a normal step with upper body rotation. Brandon talked about a neutral spine, so we need to be able to find those positions. And then from here, just drop it down. Oh, functional. Right, my upper body's rotated. I can keep a neutral spine. My foot's all on the floor. I can push off. I can return back. Now we've just taken a basic lunge and we've made it a little bit more functional. Again, the same step as if I was walking. You can play with different lengths of lunges, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I would say for you guys to just have an idea of what you're doing and why you're doing it. What's your why of why you're prescribing an exercise? What are you trying to accomplish with a given exercise? So I guess one other thing that I'll address there was when she stepped and she was, let's say we're here. Let's have everybody get into this position. Jesus. How easy are your bodies loaded or unloaded here?
Unloaded.
They're kind of unloaded, right? So we're at the bottom of a lunge, but we're unloaded. So let's come back up. Okay. Now and that's usually like, you'll hear people say, don't let that knee go over the toe. So, we'll step out here and now we've kind of unloaded our body. It's actually pretty awkward to move from there. Let's just play with something, for example. Let's say that we just take like a normal walking step and we drop to here. Is my knee behind my toe? My knee's behind my toe, right? Now if I need to move backwards, I'm loaded. Let's say I need to move forward. I'm loaded. Let's say I need to move to the side. I'm loaded. To the other side, diagonally. So I've kept the tensegrity of my body just by shortening up that lunge. So one thing that we can do, and I'm gonna have everybody try this, let's shorten up that step. So we're gonna turn that upper body, and then we're gonna come back. Like I'm just taking a step, and then I step back. So we step, and we step back. Let's have everyone try it. Let's just
Take your time getting into this. If you haven't done a deep lunge like this before.
And think about, let's do maybe a few reps. Think about turning that rib cage into the front leg just as if you were walking. Go the other way. No, the rib cage turning into the front leg, just as if we were walking. So we take a step and we're just dropping down.
Switch your rib up. So as you rotate, you're gonna rotate that way. There you go. Yep, just like a running motion.
So do it one way, and then try it on the other leg, and tell me if it feels equal to you guys.
Can't even get the other leg on.
Just like you rotate into that knee leg. It's the same thing as a lunge. There you go. Once you start adding rotation, you can go forward. going and do all these extensions and squats and all that, but once you start adding certain types of rotation, you start messing things up.
So you see how that makes a big difference from the typical normal lunge from what you get trained. Did anyone notice any discrepancies one side versus the other?
Yeah,
One side feels
it felt a
easier?
little different.
Well, so which kind of goes to show us that we all have, you know, these issues that come up, imbalances, discrepancies. And as you're prescribing exercise, whether it's for yourself or your clients or your patients, those are the things that I want you to keep in mind. Okay, well, you're feeling something differently. Why? Okay, was the foot rolling? Was it a mid-foot issue? Brandon, I think you talked about first grade issues. This is actually a really big one. I'm gonna go a whole different route. I know we only got a little bit of time left, but I think this is a huge topic that I want to kind of talk with you guys about and along and play with each other's feet. It's gonna be fun. But if you talk about when we move from the ground up, as I take a step and I come through this foot, what happens to my big toe, my middle foot, my ankle? What sort of position am I getting into from here to there? Right, so that great toe is actually going into extension, right? It's getting pushed up from the ground. My ankle's dorsiflexing as I'm coming through. So that's the same motion that happens when we go into a lunge, when we squat. Anytime that we're loading a limb, that great toe gets pushed up into extension. Not to get too crazy with everything, but the forefoot abducts in relation to the talus. That calcaneus everts in relation to the callus, and that's what allows this bone to come with the internal rotation. Then the femur internally rotates, and that eccentric glute. So if we have an issue where that great toe can't extend, the forefoot or the midfoot can't abduct because we have some restrictions in there. The tibia is not internally rotated, the femur is not internally rotated. Whether that's due to adhesions in the glute, adhesions through the muscles of the big toe, problems in the deep front line, all the way up to that adductor. All those can kind of, some things that you can look at that might be a reason why this person is not having control through his lunge, or why he's not feeling, he or she is feeling that glute activate. So let's all have a seat on the floor and let's play with something. We're gonna take our shoes off, and everyone's gonna play with your own feet.
Sorry about the hole. Just kidding. Nice pair.
You don't have to take the shoes off if you don't have the pedicure. We don't want to see it either.
See the markings? You gotta
Well, what we're going to do, we're going to stabilize 4 ribs of your foot, and we're going to leave this first rib free and open. I want you to grab your first rib with your other hand, and we're just going to kind of wiggle it up and down. And we're just going to kind of assess the type of movement we have today.
Mine doesn't.
You already heard mine doesn't. We can also take the big toe, push it up. See how well that's the ability for that first rib to expand. And then try it on the other foot. Move that one around. Move that big toe up. And see if you can't feel the difference one side versus the other. See if there's any discrepancies. Is everybody perfect in here? No one has discrepancies? Okay. So now, let's just say we found discrepancies. You see, one side's a little stuck, one side moving as well as the other. We can, have assumptions that we will validate later through the gain of motion analysis, but man, maybe they can't get through that leg as much. Maybe that's why the catapult is getting the thump on the treadmill on the other side. But one thing that you guys can do for yourselves is take that thumb and let's dig in between the bone of the first metatarsal and the bone of the second metatarsal, and see if you have any tenderness in there as you're kind of moving from the toes towards the talus, towards the ankle. Does anyone have any kind of tenderness? Does that feel good to everybody?
Yeah, work your way up.
There it is. Whoa.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
So now, if you do have those whoas in there, now that's dehydration, right? That muscle is, and that's the thing that Barry talked about earlier. Like, oh, I didn't know that was there. So now we have dehydration, or that first ray, the muscle in between the first and second ray, the fascia through there, maybe that and some hydration. So by putting some pressure through there, or by doing some mobilization, we now bring some of that hydration to allow movement through that foot to be a little smoother. So now, for example, in that lunge, if you were getting some of that stuff and the foot was coming up, it wasn't contacting the ground, after doing these moves, you might feel like, oh man, my first race finding the ground much better. That feels smoother. I'm gliding through that side, a little bit more. But with that toe being off, or with that first race being off, it actually causes myriad of issues from knee pain to hip pain to back pain to shoulder pain. Does this make sense to everybody? Let's play with both of those first rays on both sides, and then let's come up and kind of do the lunge again. I want to see your guys' responses. If anyone just kind of feels differently, those feet are kind of finding the ground a little bit. Take about 2 minutes, mobilize yourself. Minute on each side, kind of digging there, playing there.
A little fascial mobilization or MFR, myofascial release. So this is something that you guys are able to do. You don't have to be hands-on with someone. And I'll use the little guy. So what I want you to do is you're going to lay on, we'll all start on our right side. So we're going to lay on our left. Everybody's going to get onto their left side. And what we're going to do is let's start a little closer to the knee. So a little more of the exertion. And what you're going to do is just relax your adductors. Let them just melt over top of this. So you can have your knees. Yeah, make sure it's not on the bone. I want you to be just off the bone. After you melt over top of this, I'm going to let you guys do this for a second. Walk around, make sure everybody's all right. Good, so after you get those adductors right on the inside right here, so this kettlebell is going to be just right here. And what I want you to do is start shifting the skin. So what you're going to do here is you're just going to move your skin back and forth a bit. We're not actually going to roll over it. If we roll, it's going to be much more superficial. But if we get the skin shifting, now we're making an adjustment at the fascia, which is getting down to the muscle, and the muscle to the bone. So I want you to focus on those areas, and then we're going to take our knee and we're going to extend it all the way out, nice and slow, and then we're going to bend it back up again. Good. All right, now we're going to go a little higher up the leg. So just a bit, about an inch or two, more into the muscle belly of the adductor. You may find more tender, it may be less tender. It all depends on yourself, where you're holding this tension. So now I want you to shift back and forth again a couple of times. Back and forth.
Yes, sir.
As that starts to become a little less tender, I want you to extend that leg out again. So now we're hydrating this fascia and those adductors. If we go to the myofascial lines, this is the deep front line of the body, or what a lot of us are considering as the core of the body now. All right, now we're going to go even higher up into that muscle belly. Start getting up in there pretty good. Whoa! Oh, yeah. So now I want everybody at least in the middle of the muscle belly, or starting to get more up into the pelvis. Somewhere around there, I want you to relax over top of that thing as much as you can. Put a lot of weight on it, and just let it melt. How's this doing for everybody? All right. And now you're going to shift that leg back and forth a bit. Get that skin moving some.
No cap.
And then you can take that leg, extend it on out, and bring it on back in again. All right. And this last one that we're going to do, we're going to take that all the way up as high as it'll go without being on the bone. Yeah, all the way up in that run. All the way up in there.
No cap.
Relax down over top of that. Yep. So this is if you have that 16 or the 12 or even the 10. little bit higher up, so you're gonna get more pressure. If you have a 4 or a 6, it's gonna be a little less pressure. This is something that you can do. You can start moving this again, getting the skin moving back and forth. Breathe nice and easy. Diaphragmatic breathing. No hydration there. And now, yeah, extend that leg out. Bring it back in again. So we talk about back pain. If these adductors directly connect up into the pelvic floor goes up into the anterior aspect of the spine, you think we can address some low back pain just by getting into these areas? Yes. Heck yeah. And you guys clearly have a little bit of tension here. All right, now everybody go ahead and stand up. Take your legs out, see how everything feels. Try that lunge on that right side again and see how that feels. How's that feel to everybody? A little different, huh? So that's something, a quick MF bar that you can do just to start getting some hydration into the tissue. Huge for back pain. I've had people's back pain go away just like that by teaching them that technique. Now, I'm not saying that's the answer to everything. That's a piece of the puzzle. That's a part of the puzzle. All right, but that's something. The deep front lines being the core of the body, if that is off, then all of the other lines can't be fully on. All right, so that's a huge one to take a look at. And something if we're deadlifting, we're squatting, we're power cleaning, anything right through here, they're going to be really loaded into these positions, but not so much eccentrically. So we're also going to have to get into some lateral lunges. We're going to have to get into some sort of rotation. We've got to get the glide and slide happening again with the adductors and the glutes. So these are all great techniques that you can use. We'll get more into all sorts of stuff through our Instagram. We've got some online programs coming out, things as well, working on some of these different myofascial release techniques. And all of it is going to be non-hands-on stuff. So it'll be great for you guys if you like some of this. And we'll get you guys, we'll leave them on the right. Go right into the...
Yeah, let's move all the kettlebells over to there.
What's on the pitch?
Iceberg on the different things that affect how we feel, what we feel for the biochemistry, the structure, the mental, emotional, what we think, and just about everything that we touched on today takes into account the structural aspect of it. Right, but the other things that we can do to help us feel better, whether it's back pain, any type of injury, mental clarity, symptoms, dry mouth, everything else, is addressing the biochemistry and the mental stressor side of our lives. So what we're going to end with here is something that kind of addresses them both. And it's pretty simple. I'm pretty sure everybody here does it. And it's actually fundamental to life. And it's called breathing. So what we're going to do, we're going to play with some different breathing exercises that will saturate our body with oxygen. And as it saturates our body with oxygen, which we'll kind of take into account some of that biochemistry, nutrition stuff we talked about, we need oxygen to live. Cells distribute oxygen to our whole body. It's fundamental for our cells to survive, but it also will help bring a little mental clarity, decrease stress, allow us to kind of feel a little better and go about our day. So what I'm going to have everybody do is let's sit on the floor. Actually, you know what? Let's lay down. So let's have the front row kind of move forward, and then the back row move forward. Yeah, without that.
I don't play. I lay down to bed.
What we're going to play with first is really just how to take a proper breath. So if we think of our bodies in 3 zones, let's say the first zone is kind of right on our pubic bone, right where the pubic symphysis is. Zone 2 is going to be right where our diaphragm sits. And that's called zone 3 is everything above. So all the way into our neck and even up to the top of our head. I want everybody to take a big inhale down into zone 1. So breathe right into your pubic bone and fill that up with air. Once that fills up with air, we're going to fill up the belly. So we're going to fill up the diaphragm. And then after that, we're going to breathe up into our chest, neck,